This week on the John DeLong Show, due to an error with my handy recorder, I'm recording this show incredibly late in the game. Uruguay versus France has just kicked off. I'm going to try and pay attention to the game and also record this show. Here we go! Well, hey there, hi there, ho there. Welcome to the John DeLong Show. Welcome to episode number 36. Come on in for your weekly dose of the Friday Afternoon Fiesta, the Friday Afternoon Fun Time. So happy to have you here with me. Very pleased to have you come along for this little journey. And originally, I had recorded most of the show anyhow on the proverbial road. I had brought my my little handy recorder that I used during Burger Week to try and get some sounds from the Canada Day party. Had a quick chat with Kareem, friend of the show, as well as Megan, the other host of the party, and also Phil, the third host, just saying the word no. As well as a few other things that went on. It was a very nice Canada Day party. Weather was really great. It was muggy and sunny and hot, but just absolutely beautiful day. Really, really fun times. Unfortunately, those audio files were not salvageable. They didn't sound good. I tried to check as I was recording, and everything seemed fine at that point in time. But once I plugged it into the computer, I didn't want to try and put that out. So we're doing it live, as it were. I have no plan whatsoever about what I'm going to talk about on this show, but about what's going to go down. I think this is going to be one of those ones where I just sort of talk about things. Of course, I'm going to talk about the World Cup. I know that. Right now, as I'm recording this, Uruguay and France have just kicked off, so that's going to be coloring some of my commentary during the run of this show. Might have to pause it here and there to watch important things. So we are going to talk about the World Cup. As I mentioned, I'll talk about this right at the top of the show. As I mentioned, it's a scorcher out here in Eastern Canada. Today is not too bad, as I'm recording this Friday. It's not too bad here today. I think we're supposed to get there's a chance of showers, chance of thunder showers, which would be great because it has been muggy, humid, like 100% humidity today. Hoping that we'll get some thunder to just sort of break some of that up. It's been hot. I think that there's an actual death toll, essentially, and these are folks who are obviously in the worst sort of dire straits, and it's coming out of Quebec. Over 30 people have passed away. Of course, like I said, these are people who are incredibly impoverished. They're maybe homeless. They're maybe elderly. They're infirmed or sick in some way. But it's a real shame that in 2018. People are dying in Canada, in major Canadian cities like Montreal, dying because it's too damn hot. And it's the humidex here in Halifax, which the humidity in Halifax, the heat in Halifax doesn't tend to get as bad here as it would in a Montreal. But even here, the humidity, depending on who you asked, went anywhere between feeling like 35 degrees to up to 40. That's toasty. You know what I mean? It's not toasty because it's humid, so it's just sort of like damp and warm, which is kind of gross. But absolutely wild weather. I guess it is supposed to, the heat is supposed to break a little bit. It's sort of record-setting heat for this time of the year. Normally here in July, in the early parts of July, like it is right now, normally we'd be getting sort of, mid to low 20s, humidity maybe feeling a few degrees higher than that, but nothing crazy like 40 friggin' degrees. Like that's just crazy for this part of the world. I thought it gets hot here is the moral of the story. Anyhow, another thing that's been going on, speaking of the heat though, as I mentioned, Halifax experiencing its first major heat wave of the summer, and one of the two hospitals here in town, the one that probably should have been shut down a long time ago, the Victoria General, one of the three hospitals if you count the IWK, but the air conditioning system in the Victoria General's ICU is no longer working properly. So I guess it's a story where the large fan that pushes the cold air into the unit so that it stays, cold. It broke down last week, and they've got a smaller fan replacing it, but obviously, heat is not being regulated properly. Now I'm reading this from a CBC article, which the irony of the spokesperson for the hospital is should not be lost on anyone. Jill Flynn, director for cancer and palliative care at the hospital, said a smaller fan has been temporarily replaced to the large one, but it noted that it's been warmer in parts of the building. Quote, "We've gone through procurement and we'll be obtaining a larger fan in about August," Flynn said. Okay, whoever was in charge of picking the VG's spokesperson for this thing in a situation where the ICU is not getting the proper climate control, and which could possibly lead to very dire circumstances for the patients in intensive care. Having that person be in charge of cancer and palliative care for the hospital, that's maybe not a good look. I'm sure that Jill Flynn is a very good employee. She's probably a very good communicator. Probably is a really good outward facing sort of voice for the hospital in other situations. But in a situation where not being able to procure a part for a solid month, that could possibly lead to very dire outcomes for people in intensive care. I'm not going to say that this is definitely going to lead to deaths, but it's possible. Having that be the person that you have come out and say, we've sent this through the proper channels and we should have something in August. Maybe not a good look for the VG. Honestly, I think that there needs to be a push to get this part to the hospital as quickly as possible. Of course, not all units at the hospital will have air conditioning, but I think that a thing like ICU, obviously is a unit that in particular would need to be properly climate controlled. It's kind of crazy that it's going to take them a month almost to get that going. Just seems bonkers and just absolutely wild to me. One last thing I'll say about the heat. If you are experiencing high temperatures like we have been, of course, it's been said a million different places by a million different people and probably a million different better ways. But I'm going to throw my voice into the hat. If you have animals, if you have small children, don't be leaving them in an air-conditioned car. I don't care if you're going into the store for 5 minutes. I don't care if you're going into the store for 30. If you're going to be leaving an animal or a human in a car that can't, deal with their own temperature regulation, and you're not going to be leaving them with air conditioning. I don't care if you're cracking the window a little tiny bit or whatever. Just either leave the air conditioner on or leave the pet or child at home, or if you can, take them into the store with you. I actually, over the Canada Day long weekend, stopped by a grocery store on my way to hanging out with the girlfriend's sister and her boyfriend. And there we were hearing the yelps of a small animal, a dog in a car, and it was a hot day, and obviously the dog was in a fair amount of distress. And here I am sitting this is another thing. If you're hearing these noises, if you come across a situation where an animal is in a car like that, and they're obviously in distress, like this dog was, I'm standing there and I am hearing these yelps, my first instinct is to go inside, back into the store to the customer service desk and get like mall security or the store security to deal with that. You know, it's wild to me because I'm sitting there. I'm not sitting there. I came out of the grocery store. And there's this little gaggle of like, and sorry to my 5 baby boomers who listen to the show regularly, but this like little gaggle of baby boomers just being like, "Oh, that's awful. Oh, somebody really ought to do something." Well, go do something, motherfucker. You got 2 feet and a fucking heartbeat for the moment. Like, God. So I'm just sitting there listening to them go on about how it's awful, and I'm incredulous at the moment. So I just interrupt them mid-sentence and I say, "Where's the car?" They say, "Oh, it's the one over there with the main license plates." Thank you. And I walk into the store. I don't give a fuck if they think I was rude or whatever. I don't give a fuck if they think that I was an entitled millennial who was interrupting them in the middle of their conversation. Go do something. Do the right goddamn thing. You feckless piece of crap. Anyhow. That's enough about that. Enough about the weather. Enough about me yelling about inactive baby boomers. We're gonna take the little musical interlude here. We're gonna talk about whatever. Probably the World Cup next. Let's talk about the World Cup next. That's what's up. So a bit of a live, not live update of the Uruguay-France game, which I'm kind of half watching. Taking pauses from recording to sit back and watch here as I record this show for you. Still 0-0 about halfway through halftime as I'm recording. So this is kind of the game that I was sort of more looking forward to from today's games. Later on today, Brazil faces off against Belgium. That should be an okay game, but I should say I think that I know how it'll pan out. But like honestly, the way this, I think I said last week, this is a weird World Cup, and I mean the round of 16 did not disappoint in that regard. Just to give you a quick recap, I believe these were my picks. I think I said Portugal over Uruguay, France over Argentina, although I think I flip-flopped back and forth on that. I might have said Argentina through to give us the Argentina-Portugal game, which I was kind of hoping for. So I think maybe I got that one wrong. Whatever. Brazil over Mexico, Belgium over Japan, Spain over Russia, Croatia over Denmark, Switzerland versus Sweden. I can't remember. I think I might have said Switzerland. And I think I said England to shock Colombia. Like I said, it was a weird outcome. I didn't do too well in my predictions from the sounds of things. Uruguay beat Portugal 2-1, in which was a really fantastic game last Saturday. France, to my mind, kind of shocked Argentina 4-3. It was a really great back and forth game. Brazil beat Mexico. We were all kind of expecting that. Belgium beat Japan, although Japan played really, really well. 3-2 final score there. Really fantastic game overall. Japan were kind of a heartbreaker. They were up 2-0 and ended up capitulating in the second half. So what do you have? What can you say about that other than good show Japan, good job Belgium. Spain losing in penalties to Russia, the first of the penalty shootouts of the round of 16. There's a shocker, real surprise. I think Russia's doing better than anybody had expected. It's really weird. I don't know what to say about that Russian team. Like I said, they're just better than anybody was anticipating. Russia kind of has this reputation as being a soccer-loving country, a football-loving nation, but that their national team, just sort of due to the rules of the Russian league requiring a certain percentage of Russian players in the starting lineup, tends to have fairly because you get these players who you want to have sort of the best Russian players in order to play in your leagues, and So you give them these big contracts, and they're kind of lazy and unmotivated, and it's kind of been the story on the world stage. But they're in through to the quarterfinals, kicking off tomorrow against Croatia, who also won on penalties against Denmark. Croatia.